overseas, let's just talk about the general for a second. It's a chance for you to make more money. Hopefully you price it right, put some margin in there. You can grow sales with some overseas sales. It's important to realize that 80% of the purchasing power in the world is now outside of the United States. We used to have 50% of it after World War II. We have 50% of the wealth in the world after World War II. We're down to about 20%, so 80% of the purchasing power in the world is not in the United States. The U.S. needs to export more, all of you do. We run a trade deficit of $43 billion a month right now, times 12, that's $500 billion a year. We import more than we export. The United States has to export more. Eventually we won't have a choice. And the more that we send dollars overseas, the more they have dollars to come back and buy our used machinery. So it's a market that will only grow. How many of you are already exporting machinery overseas? Most? Awesome. Keep it up. Nice work. Some of our credentials, we do everything from hazardous to nuclear facilities. We load open top ocean containers. We touch a lot of that stuff. We do about $35 million worth of service work a year. Our services are worth about 2% of the value of the product, so when you think about that, well over $1 billion of machinery goes through us. I'd like to say we don't get any claims against us. Insurance, hello, something got damaged. We get 4 or 5 a year, and about half of those are bogus. So if you do get claims, who's got a claim against them for damage, rust, something that got vibrated? Yeah, it happens. No matter how good you are, no matter how careful you are, it's going to happen. I think about half the time, if it does happen, they're bogus. You could probably defend it. It was the railroad, it was the port overseas that lifted it and set it down too hard. So I'm just going to tell you 2 quick stories. One good one we did wrong and one we didn't. So we had a high box that went on a truck and left our place in Milwaukee someplace. Call comes in, it hits a bridge, falls off the back of the truck, and 2 automobiles hit it and get damaged. Big lawsuit. So they come back after the trucker, they come back after us. You know how that works. Everybody says it's somebody else's fault. Fortunately, we put the accurate dimensions on the box and on the bill of lading. We had them accurate. Trucker ate the whole thing. A lot of times it's not our fault. Other people make errors. But another time, perfectly innocent, there were supposed to be 42 pieces in an ocean container that went to Brazil. And we had all 42 of them weighed, contents, packing list, the whole bit, done properly. One of the boxes, number 36, got pushed behind some other customer's product. 41 of them go in the ocean container. It goes over to Brazil. Guess what happens when that other one is missing? They can't operate the machinery that was there without it. Now you got to try to get it into that country, pay customs, adjust paperwork. Messy, very messy. We did it. Happened. None of us are perfect. So you got to start out by saying, we're not perfect. So I do want to touch a little bit. And by the way, just the challenge versus domestic. You ship something overseas like this, if you're not familiar with it, if you've never sat and watched loading at a port, if you've never seen the results on the other side when something's handled over there, put on trucks over there. If you can just imagine that it goes in a truck or something here from Ohio to New Jersey, piece of cake, or in Canada or Mexico. You make an export out of it, it's going to go on off the railroad, it's going to be handled at port here, handled at port on the other side, put on a rail on the other side, handled by people who may be more or less competent, depending on what country it's going to, in handling it on the other side. And then it gets all the humidity, the salt, corrosive environment. It's sitting in an ocean container, let's say in the hot sun. It might be 140 degrees inside that ocean container. It's the most effective accelerated rusting chamber you could possibly imagine. It's putting that stuff in an ocean container and leaving it in the hot sun. And then it gets handled on the other end. It's just a rigorous trip that machine's going to take, and the parts. You just have to realize it's about 5 times as challenging to do that right as it would be a normal domestic shipment. Does that sound about right? You kind of get it. The U.S. has about $300 billion of rust and corrosion damage a year. Stuff that rusts, corrodes. That's a lot of money. It's something you got to put oil on everything, desiccate, PCI paper, do what you can to stop the corrosion. Overseas it's worse. So we'll just touch real quickly. I know there were some thoughts on the heat stamp requirements for wood. All the wood that's used in export out of this country or coming into this country has to be bug-free as their intent. You can fumigate it, but mostly it's heat treated to be sure all the bugs are dead. No country wants bugs to get there from another country and infects their trees. So there's a stamp you can get. Every region of the country has a certified agency. In Wisconsin, it's called NOMA or something like that. It takes you about a week or 10 days to go and get yourself certified to stamp your own wood. And everything that's used in the box is blocking an ocean container has to be stamped. Heat treat, bug-free, basically. There's a stamp that you could get. It's monitored pretty closely once you're approved. They watch it. Every box, wood box. Plywood is exempt because it's heat treated and manufactured. But all the 2x4s, the skids, if you've got a skid under the plywood, that all has to be stamped. You have to put it on 2 sides of the box. You have to put it on every piece that you use for blocking in ocean container. So that's real important because if it's not stamped and it gets to another country, they can reject it. They can reject the whole box. They can reject the contents. So it's tricky. It's important stuff. Kind of a pain in the butt, but it's there for a reason, and they're dead serious about it. So that's one important thing with wood boxes. The other part is we do boxes for little ones that you put in ocean containers. We did a 200,000-pound machine for Cummins engine out of Pittsburgh that drove a nuclear power plant for Westinghouse. So this box was 200,000 pounds, and needless to say, over width and over height. So we do those. But we have packaging engineers on staff in our company, graduate packaging engineers, and then there's those of us that have done it our whole lives. So when you're trying to decide what tube timbers you should put to connect to the headers, to the skid pieces, to put the box around in a big heavy machine, you can do that many different ways, and you can do it wrong. There was a ship, and Donna, you did one of these once, there was a ship being unloaded in South Korea. They had the box out of the lower hold up in the air, and what happened when it was up in the air, the crate, the timbers gave way, the piece inside free fell from there to the hold of the ship, and the ship began to sink in topside. Now, if you designed the skid underneath that heavy machine, and you didn't do this right, the claim is more than the cost of your shipment, or your profit margin that you thought you had in it. You know, you could have a piece worth a couple $100,000, the claim could be $5 million. So, I'm just giving you some of these nice little horror stories. Spartans Yell makes you take a few notes. Maybe that's why you should hire a professional packer to do this and not do this yourself. Oh, am I selling already? I think I was supposed to wait till the end. That was allowed, by the way. I'm just supposed to wait till the end. So, some of the other stuff, you know, when you load ocean containers, you've got 20s and 40s, and people push the product in. And I've talked to a bunch of my people even today about that. One thing you tend to do if it's not a full load is push it all up to the front of the ocean container, block it out, and close the door. Problem with that, the ocean container is out of balance. If they lift that up with a fork truck at a port, and they don't know that it's weighted on one end, that whole thing can tip off of a fork pretty easily. So my people load it in the middle. It costs a little more, but that's the way you're supposed to do it. So you block out one end for 6 feet with wood blocking, form a bulkhead, put the product in, block out the other. You may have 2 6-foot blocks in there, but you're supposed to center the weight as best you can. You can see the problem. It looks good to you to shove it in the easy way, up to the bulkhead, block it. Yeah, that's not always a good idea. So you have to hold everything down in there. Again, the vibration that's going to get on bad rural roads in third world countries. On rail, it's going to get vibrated all over the place. There's some people that try to band the product down inside, but the bands will snap a lot of times, and then there's nothing holding it down. So we actually block out with wood from the top of the ocean container down to the boxes. So we top block it down and hold it down with wood locking, stamp all of that. And that holds it in there almost regardless of the vibration it gets. Now it's blocked top and it's blocked end. You can do that in 20s and 40s. That's probably the right way to do it. It costs a couple bucks, but remember what the claims are worth. The other problem with damage overseas is it's so difficult and expensive to go over and fix it. So let's say something gets to Brazil and it's damaged. You've got the piece, you've got a technician here who could fix it. But imagine the cost of taking some repair parts over there, flying the technician over there in order to fix it. Damage that might be easy to repair here is very difficult to repair overseas. So again, it's the cost of doing this right, spending an extra nickel here, versus the cost of it not getting it in good shape. The insurance claim, the customer relationship damage. So we pay a little more. When you take OSB, that particle board, for instance, you can use it. There's nothing wrong with this. But we use almost all half-inch CDX. It's better, it's stronger. If it's left out in the rain, it's going to hold up way better than that pressboard OSB. So does it cost us a tad more? Yeah, but we use all half-inch CDX. It's just way better for the humidity left out in some environment overseas someplace. Do we spend a little more? Yes. Is it worth it for our customers? Yes. So that's the right way to do that. There are open top and flat racks in the container modular system. Those are choices for big, high machinery. Well, that's a 300,000-pound destroyer gun, by the way. We're rolling a few pictures of things we pack just to generate questions for later concepts. And our Charleston port facility, we handled some 300,000-pound pieces. We like that heavy stuff. That's a challenge. So when you get to some of the do's and don'ts, I've talked to a couple of my managers. In fact, Don and I talked about, is there a spec for doing this? Is there something I can give you that says this is how you pack stuff? And there really isn't. Some of the big manufacturers, GE and others, have their own corporate specs. There's nuclear specs, there's military specs. There's certain railroads, trucking companies want to see things done a certain way. So Donna, we and I talked, basically you're supposed to do this in what's called good commercial practices. What is good commercial practices? It's open to some interpretation. Basically a large packing company like us, basically we are the standard. It's what somebody that does this successfully all the time does, becomes good commercial packing practices. And I wish I could tell you there's an exact spec for this. There really isn't. In fact, my own people, Jeff's fairly new at this, about 6 months now. But I called my own managers, and for instance, tying down heavy loads, some of them use 1.25 inch banding, and they tie it down that way. Some of them still use cable. They take cable with turnbuckles and tie it down. One of our other plants has gone to all nylon strapping. You buy it, you're going to lose it. You put it in the bill of the customer. You use all nylon straps to hold it down. 3 of our people in 3 different plant locations do this 3 different ways. They all work. They're all successful. It's a choice. A lot of times it's the labor component. It's not the cost of the cable or the tie-downs, nylon tie-downs. It's the labor. It's a lot easier to do nylon tie-down than it is to put cable over it and do the turnbuckles. So you always got to think of that labor component, and possibly on the other side as well. The nylons are reusable on the other side. Take it off a flat pack, use those on the truck. Now that's your customer. To some degree, you don't care. Whereas the cabling, they got to undo that, and it's harder to use that. So it's a question when it's good commercial practice is what you do, what you're comfortable with, what your people are comfortable with doing. Some of the things, otherwise, hazardous is real difficult. We have people that are certified annually to do hazardous. That's batteries, that's paint, touch-up paint, that kind of stuff. That's a problem sometimes. We run a foreign trade zone. You know what an FTC foreign trade zone is? You can bring component parts into it without paying U.S. customer duty on it. You can reassemble those, and GE does that. A lot of the big companies bring in parts, their component parts for something before they reship. So we run the FTC zone.